Hello, wassail, good afternoon to you all. My name is Gabe Cook and I'm the Ciderologist, and it gives me great pleasure to be talking to you today as part of Global Bar Week here at Imbibe Live. It's a joy to participate in this event during these really challenging times, these really tough conditions, obviously. It's amazing that we continue to have these online events to connect us and to make sure that these fantastic drinks remain front of mind, and that when we do get back into that space and place where we can be in each other's company and taste these drinks together, that we're ready to go. I'm looking forward to that time. This session is called Now is the Time to Discover Cider. And, you know, cider is my business. It's my industry. I am the world's only independent cider advocate. So, you know, I've got a pretty good niche in the marketplace. But this is really an indication of a real challenge with cider. With beers and wines and spirits and cocktails and all manner of other drinks, there are huge numbers of very knowledgeable experts. In fact, there are whole industries based around the advocacy and promoting and learning and understanding about those drinks. And for cider, there is pretty much me, which again just indicates that cider is not so well understood or appreciated as it could be. Now, obviously, I'm speaking to you from the mothership here in the UK, but to everybody who's watching via, you know, the BCB events from Brooklyn and Sao Paulo and Berlin, the good thing is there is cider made in your nations. In fact, cider is made all around the world. In fact, cider is the world's fastest growing drinks category. There's never been a better time to be involved in cider, to become interested in cider. Now, where cider is at is that so often it's seen or viewed as being a singular thing. You go into the bar and, you know, there can be a great range of beers on hand pull, if you're lucky enough, on tap and in the fridge. You've got the great selection of wines, you've got the fantastic cocktail list, and then you've got the cider, just one cider, because cider's just one thing, right? No, it's not just one thing. There can be a multitude of different things, depending upon the type of apple that you utilize, the processes that you undertake, the region maybe where that cider is coming from, if there's a particular, you know, indigenous heritage and culture around it. There is as much diversity in range of styles with cider as there is with beer and wine, and that's what I'm going to relay to you hopefully today. Like I said, I'm a cider expert. I know a decent amount about wine. I worked at a winery in New Zealand for 18 months, and I know a decent amount about beer because I've drunk a lot over the years. But cider really is my area of expertise, and I really hope that you start to gain a little bit of the enthusiasm and the infectiousness that I have for cider. But it all starts with understanding about these different types, these different styles, if you want. Now, you know, the endeavor is the beginning of the conversation. It's not saying, I've worked out what the 8 styles of cider are. Far from that. Come on. We're talking about a drink industry that is only just starting to be aware and to come to the conclusion that there are different types of style of cider, whereas beers and wines have been doing it for hundreds of years. I'm not so arrogant enough to say that we're going to have it nailed right now. But I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can approach understanding that there are these different types and styles of cider. And first of all, it comes down to region. So I am originally from the west of England, which has this amazing heritage of cider, utilizing specific varieties of apple that have been grown for the sole purpose of making cider for centuries. They are called cider apples, funnily enough, and they are characterized by tannin. Tannin like you would get in red wine, in tea and in coffee. And here is a cider that is very much a tannic driven cider. It comes from a cidery called the Newt in Somerset, which is heartland of cider area in England. And just have a look at this. Look at the colour on that. Beautiful, really deep gold, rose gold almost, getting towards kind of tawny. And that's coming from these tannins. And this is made from a single variety. The majority of ciders would be made as blends around the world, but they are made from individual apple varieties that, whether it being a tannic cider apple or a lighter, fresher, more acid-driven eating apple in those two sort of broader camps. But drilled down, every single apple varietal is entirely unique and distinctive. And this is made, I'll show you the bottle because it's beautiful, from a single varietal Dabinet. Dabinet, common cider apple utilized, great cider apple. Big cider makers like it because it has really good high cropping potential. Smaller cider makers like it because it's got lots of oomph. So, on the nose, deep, rich, earthy, spicy, almost kind of like molasses in there. It's these rich phenolics that come with these tannic apples. Cheers to you all. Cheers in cider country out here. We say wassail, Old English for be whole, good health. So, wassail to you. Oh, it's fantastic. Unlike the majority of ciders that you might expect, which as soon as you take a sip, there is like a zing and a tingle at the front of the mouth. You almost get nothing straight away because these apples are really low acidity, low zing, low freshness, but high on the tannin. Starts to hit about midway through the palate, and then it starts to really blossom and bloom. It's got a really long finish, and it's got this nice, light, slightly woody bitterness in there. It's made entirely in stainless steel tanks. There's no wood involved. That's just naturally coming from the fruit. And also we have astringency, a mouth drying sensation that helps to provide some real intensity, integrity and structure. This is it's the first time I've tried this cider, as it happens. This is their 2018 vintage of the Dabinet at the Newt, and I love it. Dabinet has often like a slightly sort of orange juice or even like a tangerine pith and rind kind of thing going on there, and this certainly does. And so from a flavor profile point of view, you have these more tannic driven apples, classic to what we call the West Country of England. For anybody who's been over to England, you're talking about from the Welsh Marches, like Herefordshire, Gloucestershire, down to Bristol, go Bristol, into Somerset, Devon, Dorset, and down into Cornwall too. An old heritage, part of the old world of cider making, and we'll come on to some other old world ciders in a moment. So this is a great example of these old world ciders and these tannic driven ciders. Don't expect it to be the clean, crisp, refreshing cider. It won't, because it hasn't got the acidity, which really helps to do that. If you're after a cider that is amazing with food, amazing as a wintertime drink, where you don't need it to be just a slucking, thirst quencher, this is a fantastic cider for you to go for. Okay, so that is an example of a tannic-driven cider. I know I've done this kind of session many times for Imbibe before, including a virtual Imbibe Live previously, but we've got more international guests this time, so this is for you people, and we've got some more stuff to come too. Now, cider number 2 is also from England. It's from Kent in the southeast of England. They don't have the long-standing heritage of making cider from these cider apples, but they do still today grow wonderful dessert apples, eating apples, and cooking apples. And this cider comes from the Nightingale Cider Company, Sam Nightingale. This is his Wild Disco Cider, single variety Discovery. And for anybody who's ever bitten into Discovery, it is amazingly, look at the colour on that, much paler, almost got a slightly pinkish hue. It's all about the aromatics on this. To die for. If you're into your aromatic wines at all, your Alsace wines, your Gewürz, or your Pinot Gris, it's just so oily, so intense. Absolutely fantastic. Cheers, wassail to you all. So we get a really nice light zing up the front of the mouth. Then we get a nice dollop of fruitiness. Cider number 1 had very low levels of sugar, actually. Interesting fact to know, the vast majority of ciders start their life as bone dry ciders. All of the sugar gets converted to alcohol during fermentation. Cider will normally stop fermenting when there's no sugar left to ferment. It's just that the majority of ciders are presented as being sweet because they will have sugar added to them after fermentation and stabilize, because that's what consumers want, or at least that's what consumers are told they want. And this cider does have a little bit of sugar added back to it, which is really helping to enhance these super oily, floral, intense aromatic characters. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, I can say, as the world's only full-time independent cider advocate, that is a brilliant cider. In fact, those are 2 brilliant ciders, great exponents of their style, of course, because they are completely different. Different to look at, different to smell, different to taste, different food matches, different sort of vibes and different occasions. The first one, a bit more grown up, more austere. This one, joyful, playful, easygoing, and will appeal to different consumers with different palate preferences at different times. Not better, not worse, just different. And I cannot, stress this enough. The challenge is that you, in the drinks trade, you haven't really been told enough by cider makers that your cider, their cider is made from apples in a particular way, and it will taste different. It's normally just medium dry, crisp and fresh, and, great for summertime. We need to do better as an industry to inform you all of the nuances. And it's starting. Talking about the apple varietals, talking about the process, what has gone in there, naming the process, talking about giving you as much information as possible. And it's really, really exciting time for cider. I really do believe that. So you've got two English ciders there that are completely different in their mode and presentation. Let's have a look at other old world nations too. For anybody who's been to Spain, to Asturias or the Basque Country on the northern coast of Spain, the climate is such that it doesn't support a lot of grapes so well. You do get some, obviously you've got Verdejo and those kinds of things, and Albarino, cooler climate, but apples grow really well. And there's this amazing old heritage of making Cidra natural is what they call it. And as the name suggests, wild ferment in these big chestnut barrels, bone dry, undergoes a malolactic fermentation, so you get some of the conversion of the zingy malic acid into softer sour lactic acid, and a little bit of encouraged volatile acidity. We're talking about some of those slight acetic kind of characters. If in the right proportion, they add complexity. If too much, then it's just I'll have it on my fish and chips, thank you very much. It's a vinegar, but just in the right proportion, it adds this real complexity. And it is all about being idiosyncratic to style. And talking about being idiosyncratic to style, you pour this cider from a height to place it into the bottle, because it's a still product, but it's got some dissolved CO2 still in there, which invigorates. Should I have a go? I'm indoors. My girlfriend might kill me if I get it on the carpet. Let's give it a go, shall we? I haven't tried this before. This wasn't practiced. I wasn't going to do this, but here we go. Might stand back. Got a carpet. I'll just do it from here, possibly. Here we go. Not bad. I only got a little bit on the carpet. Shh, don't tell anyone. So the nature of this cider, again, it's going to be more acid driven. It's quite pale, almost kind of like lemony green, really. And on the nose, it's really zingy, it's fresh. If you're into your lambic beers, into your gers and things like that, a lot of crossover, a lot of symmetry there. And cheers, wassail. In Basque Country, they would say topa. Oh, that's so good. The citrus, the lime characters that come out of it are intense. But because we had this wild ferment, it's had a little bit of time sur lie in the barrel as well. So you just got a little bit of toasty autolysis character. It's a dream. If you like sour beers, or you're just into that kind of slightly wild, funky, acidic bent, this is from Beretziatua, which is one of the great Basque cider makers. It does the job. And it's very inexpensive as well. In my opinion, it's too cheap. And all of cider around the world is endeavoring to try and find ways to introduce extra sort of value into the process. So that's Cidre Naturel. Also in northern France, the other sort of big old world nation in Normandy and Brittany, you've got a heritage of cider making there that goes back centuries. And they use, as you will see, they will utilize tannic-driven apples as well. In fact, it was the French that gave the British those wonderful tannic-driven apple varieties. And so again, you can see in the coloration, much darker, bolder of tannin. What the French do with their ciders, and sorry, this is Galipette, which is presented in a slightly more sort of modern contemporary way. I love the bottle shape, branding, the occasion. What the French do with their cider is, whereas the British will allow fermentation to go all the way through until pure dryness, the French help to control the fermentation, so not all of the sugar gets converted into alcohol. So what you're left with a naturally lower ABV. This is at 4.5%, but as we will find out, santé en français. Or it's rich, it's juicy. We've got a lot of stewed fruits, apple strudel, a lot of stone fruit in there. It's really juicy. It's really, really unctuous. It's absolutely gorgeous. So there we go. First of all, cider can have differentiation from apple profile going down different routes. And then, much like with wine, that can be incorporated also into a regional and historical and cultural context, whether it be West Country of England, whether it be Basque Country or Asturias in northern Spain, or whether it be that northern French kind of interpretation. But of course, the really exciting thing that has happened over the course of the last decade especially is the growth and the proliferation of cider in all manifest forms all over the world. I've had the opportunity to live in New Zealand. I made cider over there. And since I've become the ciderologist, over the course of the last 3 years, I've, pre-COVID times, had the opportunity to go and work and visit lots of different cider making nations. There is cider made on every single continent apart from Antarctica. Global warming hasn't got so bad yet, thankfully, that apple trees are growing there. But cider is being made everywhere. I'm not going to open all the bottles, but I'm going to show you some stuff. For example, here we have Japanese cider from the sort of slightly more northern regions of Honshu in Nagano Prefecture and Aomori, which is where this one comes from. Apples are grown. Where you have apples, you can make cider. And this is the A Factory up in Aomori. They make some really nice, gentle, fun, brisk, sparkling ciders. If you ever see that, check it out. The likelihood of you seeing that is pretty slim though, because one of the challenges of the cider is that because it hasn't got the value perception of wine, or even a lot of beers in many ways, or beers like, let's say, like Belgian beers, the commercial viability of shipping these things around the place isn't so easy. So the majority of ciders are consumed kind of in market. South America, you get that. It's happening. It's bubbling up. Here is the hop cider from Bibab Cidra, and this is in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, check your guy out here, Mark Phillip, English guy, been living over there for a long time. Look at the aesthetics of it. We are moving away from the sort of the older and more old-fashioned into very much modern, contemporary craft territory. This is a hopped cider. It's been dry hopped. We have got South African cider, Scully. Little known fact that South Africa is the world's second largest cider producer and consumer. A lot of apples are grown there, and apparently they're very, very thirsty. Scully is a great small brand, and once again, they're utilizing single varietal apples, in this case, Golden Delicious. They also do a Granny Smith and a Crips Pink too, and they're bringing back their Pack and Pear as well, which is great. So, cider is made wherever you've got apples, you can make cider, and you've got this amazing diversity. Again, it looks banging. It's obviously trying to appeal to a new consumer. A lot of consumers in the UK, they know what cider is, and it's either associated with something that's very mainstream and a little boring, a little safe, or something that's very, very kind of rough and rustic. Here is the presentation of something that is endeavouring to tell a slightly different story. The most exciting place, kind of in my opinion, other than the UK, obviously, right now, is the US of A. An amazing number of cider makers. The growth, the resurgence, the volume, the quality, the integrity of ciders, absolutely sensational. Everything from those that present themselves a bit more like a wine to those that, again, presented in the 16-ounce can here or 12-ounce can to appeal to that kind of consumer. Modern, crisp, fresh, very often with the addition of other flavours. We get that in the UK too, but there's a big drive and movement for that in the US. And, I am a man of the cider world, and a good cider is a good cider, whether that be a single variety, bittersweet from Somerset, whether that be something light and fresh, whether that be with the judicious and clever utilization of hops or something else into that cider. I am all for it. if you're in the US, Brooklyn, get out there. Some amazing producers in upstate New York. There's in the Hudson Valley and up into the Finger Lakes. Absolutely amazing. Do go check out what's on your doorstep. And cider is starting to emerge in markets whereby there's a the cider category doesn't effectively exist, and there are some entrepreneurial people endeavoring to get in there to tell that story and to try and satisfy a demand that isn't really being done. So this is the Thirsty Fox cider, which is in Mumbai in India. I was supposed to go out earlier this year to see the guys and to do a bit of work with the team. Wasn't able to, obviously, because of the COVID conditions, but I'm really admiring and enjoying people getting out there and championing fantastic cider in new markets. So, old world, new world. But the joy and the amazingness of cider does not end there, people. I know a lot of people will be watching who are into your cocktails. Cider is amazing in cocktails, depending on what you need. Do you want something sparkling as a replacement for a sparkling wine? We've got cider for you. Do you want something that's really zingy and fresh and full of acidity to match with some of those kind of citrus characters? We've got that. Do you need some bitterness? There's plenty of cocktails that have got a lot of bitterness in there. Blimey, cider number one, a lot of those tannic-driven ciders have got a lot of bitterness in there. And then what about spirit? If you are to distill cider, you will create a cider brandy. Or if you're in a particular region, like in France, you'll be making Calvados, of course. Aged, absolutely beautiful. The utilization of Calvados and other cider brandies as a replacement for brandy or other spirits and cocktails is amazing. It really, really does work. I'm not a cocktail expert. I like to drink them. But all I know is that cider can provide an opportunity for you to do things in your mixology that maybe other people aren't. Cider is all about getting ahead of the curve right now. It's all about opportunity. It's all about tapping into something that a lot of people aren't aware of, or if they are aware of it, they undervalue it, or they don't really see the full opportunity. But between you and me, there is amazing opportunity. And this is why you're here. This is why you're listening to me. So, cocktails. And then, for the foodies amongst you, you make cider like you make wine. It's a fruit fermentation. And so many of the sensory characters, and I am going to have a swig, hang on. So many of those sensory characters are shared between cider and wine. Phenolics, acidity, sweetness, fruitiness, earthiness, esters, etc. And so you can approach cider and food matching in the exact same way as you would with wine. I'm a big advocate of there being no rules with any form of drink and food matching. If you think that drink and that food go together such that you have an enhanced experience and enjoyment of both factors, bravo, go for it. But there are, some broader principles around, using acidity to cut through things. So, for example, the Cidre Natural, all that zingy acidity, fantastic for cutting through all the rich meats and cheeses, manchego and chorizo, etc., that would be associated with that. You can sort of like complement some of the flavors. So, like with the French one here, you can enhance a lot of the fruity kind of characters that can come from the intensity and the slight sweetness that we've got in there. If you go for something like the hop cider, like this, or in fact, look, we've even got a coat fermentation here. This comes from the fantastic Spike Brewery and Pomologic. This is Sweden. So this is where you've got apple juice and wort have been blended together pre-fermentation and fermented together. Get this really interesting kind of hybrid profile. Something about the hops that works with tomatoes, I always find, and also works with herbs like basil and things like that. So there's huge amounts of cider and food match potential. You've just got to try, give it a go. You might find out, especially when it comes to ciders with cheese. I'm sorry, wine. I know you're going to disagree with me, but I tell you what, the best cheese and booze matching I've ever witnessed and participated in has always been with cider. Go and try it and check it out. Some of these big, especially the big, bolder, rind washed, funky, or goat. There is a cider that will get in there and match with each and every one of them. And actually, food's a really, really important thing at the center of a new campaign that I am helping to drive. It's called Discover Cider. Check out www.discovercider.com and to go there, and there's a repository of lots of information. There's some cool videos, photos. There's a lot of recipes that have gone up this week as well, and conversations. And this is your one-stop shop to learn more about this amazing diversity. Yes, it's more sort of UK focused, but everything that's in there is applicable to any cider nation, any cider market. We really want to tell the sort of untold story of cider, focusing around this amazing diversity of styles, which you've just had a little sneak peek into. Different flavors, different occasions, different foods. It's really, really magical. Just trying to get people to be aware that cider isn't just the one thing, it's the many things. It's also about trying to talk about cider community. There is a wonderful community. It's a friendly place. It's an inclusive place. You know, there isn't the austerity of wine, let's say, or the too cool for school for beer. Everyone is welcome from cider. Any background, any race, any color, any background, come on in. You will find a very warm place here in the cider community. Come on down. Go and visit your local cider maker today. Guarantee you'll have a warm welcome. And finally, around the sustainable credentials of cider too. Credentials is a bit of a corporate word. Just cider is a relatively low impact in terms of its production methodology. It doesn't have anywhere near the energy input that beer does. And when you go into those orchards, they are magnificent spaces, sequestering carbon, havens for biodiversity, and a really important thing for me that they're fantastic sort of places for social cohesion, for physical well-being, go out and exercise, but also for mental health as well. Whether we just peace and quiet, speaking to people, or just, you know, finding your Zen place. Orchards really are the most wonderful environments. So yeah, discovercider.com. Please do go and check it out. It's a fun campaign. It's going till the end of the year. Do get involved, do interact. Otherwise, as I say, wherever you are in the world, go and find your local cider maker, or go to your local pub or bar or retailer and see what ciders they've got. And if they haven't got much, demand more from them. They are out there. Cider's big challenge is the route to market. And like I say, cider, it was going to be 2020, but, you know, the whole COVID thing slightly stymied that. 2021, cider's going to have its time. And I'm just waiting to see who is smart and savvy enough to pick up on the opportunity before anybody else. It is coming, people, so get involved. My name is Gabe Cook. I am the Ciderologist. Please check out my website, theciderologist.com. Check out me on the social media. If you need any help or support around selection of cider, or any consultancy or tasting or training, or just having a good chat and a good class of cider, do get in touch. That's all from me. Thank you very much. I've got to go and clean the carpet. You take it easy. What's out?